Welcome back from an ad break. Our topic, as mentioned, is the impact of recent legislation on businesses, and our main focus is on the National Credit Act as a legislation and also the Consumer Protection Act. So now we're going to start with the National Credit Act as a legislation. However, before we go deeper into the legislation, we need to first understand the purpose. Remember, we've got 5 focus areas. So the purpose of this legislation, why this legislation, what is the whole point of this legislation? Firstly, it says here it promotes a fair but competitive credit market. So that is the purpose of the NCA. It makes provision for the establishment of the National Credit Regulator. Remember, in the past, you would go to any business and you're asking for, let's say you want to buy some stuff on credit, and then they wouldn't even check if you qualify for that, but they would give you. So that was like, in a way, exploitation of consumers with regards to their credit worthiness. But now this legislation, because remember, legislation was introduced to redress the imbalances of the past. So with this one, it says you cannot just offer credit to people without checking whether they are worthy of being given the credit or not. So we are assessing their credit worthiness. Why? We are not only protecting them, but we're also protecting us as a business. Why? Against against consumers being over indebted, or against us as a business losing money at the hands of the people who are unable to pay their debts. You understand? So it promotes the social and financial interest of consumers. Basically, it's a wrap up of what I just mentioned here, to say as consumers we need to check, to be mindful of them, to say, you know what, you do not qualify, you cannot afford affordability, you don't afford to be given such credit. You don't afford to get that couch that you want on credit. You don't afford to get that car. But how do we know that? Through NCA. NCA regulates that. It helps us to check the person's affordability. Right, so now let's look at the impact of the National Credit Act, to say now, is it a good thing or it's not a good thing? Right, we can really say it's good and it's also not good. How is it good? It helps us as a business to say now we are saving us from trouble, from losing money. Remember, when we're going to give a person credit and yet the person is unable to pay us, that it's a loss on our business, right? But it is also good for them as well. It helps them to stay away from debt, basically, right? But the disadvantage about that is that now we make more money by selling on credit rather than cash. But let's look at what the notes are saying. It protects businesses against the non-paying consumers. I've just mentioned that. Businesses do a thorough credit check and receive up-to-date documentation from the consumers as proof that they can afford the payment. So the legislation is good. It helps us as a business because it allows us to do a thorough credit check. Imagine if we were not able to go through a person's credit profile, and then we would give a person not knowing that this person will not be able to afford or to pay us back. So what are the disadvantages? Businesses that do not comply with the NCA may face legal action because you are exploiting customers or consumers basically here, and you are giving people credit, yet you can see that they cannot afford to pay back. So if you do not comply with the National Credit Act, then you face legal action, and we don't want that for our business. So fewer customers buy on credit as it is more difficult to obtain credit. So it's, like I said, we make more money from the credit transactions than cash, basically. Right, let's look at the discriminatory actions. This is our third focus area. Discriminatory, if we're not compliant, we are discriminatory, basically. So refusing credit to customers based on gender and or race. So because you are not this gender, then we refuse to give you credit because we've got that thing, we stereotyping to say, this gender will not be able to pay us back. So doing that is regarded as discriminatory. You're not giving people from this specific race credit due to them being from this particular race is regarded as discriminatory. charging different interest rates to customers based on gender. Also, just like the one I just mentioned there, because you're from this race, then we're thinking we can exploit you and charge you 20% interest rate. Yet when you're from the other race or the other gender, we say, no, I think 5% will do for you. That is regarded as discriminatory. So you need to charge people same interest rate, or if you're going to charge them the interest rate, don't charge according to gender or race. Do you understand? So now we're looking at the other focus area, penalties for non-compliance. So if you do not comply, if you are discriminatory, what happens? The business may not charge any fee or interest under that specific credit agreement. So these are the penalties. Businesses may not charge any fee or interest under the specific credit agreement. Secondly, the court may declare the granting of credit by the business reckless and may order consumers not to repay the credit to the business because businesses are not compliant. So they are charging you ridiculously so, 20%, 30%. I'm not saying they should not charge you that specific one, but I'm saying they are charging you an interest rate based on gender or based on race and not any other for any other reason. So once they do that, then it means they are being discriminatory. And if they're being discriminatory, the court may declare the granting of that credit by the business reckless. So because they could see that you don't qualify, but yet they went on to granting credit. So if that's the case, then the court may declare the granting of this of credit by the business reckless and may order the consumers not to pay the credit to the business. Right, so if we don't want all of the drama, I call it drama, what must we do as a business? We need to comply with the legislation. So how to comply? Remember, this is a fifth focus area. What should we do to remedy all of that? Businesses should be registered with the National Credit Regulator. Remember here, I spoke about the National Credit Regulator when we started to say we are being regulated by the legislation. If you want to see a business that is regulated, any financial or credit granting or credit provider, they have that certificate that says National Credit Regulator, meaning they are regulated, they are allowed by the legislation. It's a legal business to offer credit to customers. So business should be registered. That way, once we are registered, once we are regulated, we know who to give credit to and who not to give credit to. So we are doing a thorough research, thorough inspection before granting out credit. So ways to comply again. Secondly, conduct affordability assessment to consumers to ensure that rather the consumer has the ability to meet his or her obligation, the obligation being what? Being the debt, basically. So we need to conduct affordability assessment so that we don't find ourselves giving people who do not qualify credit. And then we conduct credit checks with the registered credit bureau and consult with the National Credit Register. So all of that will assist us not to find ourselves giving credit to people that do not qualify. So we are done with our 5 focus area. We're going to move on to our special aspect, which is what? The rights of the consumers according to the National Credit Act. What are those rights? Right. Consumers have the right to apply for credit and to be free from discrimination. Remember we said do not say to people of this different gender maybe or of another gender that no, you don't qualify just because they're from the other gender. So all consumers have a right to apply for credit and to be free from discrimination. Full sentence, remember. Consumers have the right to receive information in plain and understandable language. There's no way where it says you have a right to receive information in English, but it says in plain and understandable language, meaning there should not be any ambiguousness used or any language or any words that are used to try and trick you there. So the language needs to be plain and understandable. And if you don't understand, you've got every right to ask for clarification. Consumers have a right to obtain reasons for credit being refused. Remember, with NCA, it allows us not to grant credit to certain people, but for specific reasons or for legal reasons. So you need to explain to them to say you do not qualify for credit because you are owing this and that other shop. So it's very important. So consumers have a right to obtain reasons. Right. Consumers have a right to refuse a credit limit increase. As a business or as a credit provider, we don't have a right to offer to increase credit limits without the approval of consumers. So consumers have a right to refuse, to say, no, I don't want an increase. Do you understand? So don't forget that these are the rights according to what? According to NCA. Consumer rights according to NCA. We also have consumer rights according to CPA. But for now, we're talking about consumer rights according to NCA. Right, we've covered the National Credit Act. We're going to go on to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll tackle the Consumer Protection Act as well as the rights according to the CPA. I'll see you just now.